There have been many things that I wanted to do in the past. I have wanted to be a vet, a zookeeper, a physician's assistant, or even a forensic scientist. Now, there's been many things I wanted to do in the past, but none of them have really stuck. But they all had a few things in common. They are all fields in science, and they all had a way to serve others. Because I have always loved science and, serving others, a medical career had started to pique my interest, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. It wasn't until a trip to Juarez during my sophomore practicum that I had actually found an interest in optometry. During this trip, we went to Juarez to build a house with missions ministry. And while building the house, one of my friends had gotten an injury while building the house. And I went with her to go to the nurse's office. The nurse at missions ministry was very nice. And she had actually given us a tour of the facility that they had there. She showed us all the rooms and where everything was done. And when we got to the room where the optometrist would come to, I felt this pull that I wanted to become an optometrist. And my passion for optometry only grew from then. I had found that I wanted to help others locally, but even across the world. And so I wanted to do optometry in missions. The reason that I also wanted to do optometry is not only do I want to help with physical blindness, which is a problem, obviously, if you can't see, but also spiritual blindness. Spiritual blindness can be very dangerous when left alone. And it often comes from ignorance of sin, of not knowing the truth. But once you hear the truth about sin, you can learn to heal from it and actually start to progress, to get better. In John 9, it talks about how Jesus heals the blind. Not only does he heal physical blindness, but he also warns about physical. He warns about spiritual as well. My main goal with my capstone was, to focus on optometry, but it was to also use it in missions. I want to not only help others, but I also want to be God's hands and feet, which is a huge reason of why I want to do it in missions. Now, when I was learning about what it takes to be a good optometrist, there were many virtues that go with it. But the ones that have stuck out the most to me in this journey have been patience, diligence, and balance. Now, have you ever had someone say to you, patience is a virtue, when often you're being too impatient with something? As annoying as this is, most of the time we are too impatient. I had learned this because in optometry, you're working with the public, you're working with lots of people who all have different personalities. Patience is a must. While I knew this, it really stood out to me when I actually started hearing stories, though, and situations where you'll need it. During my experience, I was able to shadow my optometrist for a day. My optometrist is Dr. Phillips. She has been an amazing optometrist for me, and she has taught me so much. She has taught me not only what it's like to be an optometrist, but kind of also what it takes. She taught me what everything she does in her office, and she has taught me so much about the machines that you actually get to work with as well. But during my time shadowing her, what surprised me the most was the importance of organization and the emphasis of logging your patient's data. These are actually very important because they show details and information that you'll need for your patients as an optometrist. I actually got to see what these files look like when I saw my own. This is actually a picture of my own eye. It's things like this, as well as past prescriptions and other things that I have needed for my eyes have been logged into. It's also important during the day, I also got to experience sitting in on 2 appointments that she had that day. Now, one appointment was with a 7-year-old boy, and you can imagine how that goes. But it was amazing to watch how Dr. Phillips worked with this boy in not only like having patience with having a kid who won't sit still for very long, but also how she made it easy and fun for him, so it also kept his interest. Another thing that is tricky with children, though, that needs patience, is children's eyes have the crazy ability to focus and overwork themselves to see when, of course, things are blurry. So often she would have to switch the lens back to neutral so his eyes would unfocus so she can get the most accurate reading on his eyes. She also had patience when talking with the boy because after his appointment, she had found out he was not wearing his glasses. He was not wearing his glasses because he didn't want to be different from his classmates. And, well, they didn't wear glasses, so he felt uncomfortable being different by wearing his. But she explained it in a way that would relate to him and actually made him see that wearing glasses is okay. It's supposed to help you. It's a tool. I also learned more about patience when I talked to Mr. Wiersma, who is an optometrist at Kaiser Permanente. He talked about working with the public. In optometry, there may be times where you might have to break bad news to someone, such as your vision is getting worse, but we can't really do much to fix it. Or in a few months' time, you may be blind. It's very hard when you get these situations, and Mr. Wiersma actually told me about a time that he had to tell a man, your vision is too bad for you to be able to drive, and we can do nothing else to restore it. And with working in the public, of course, you get various reactions, and unfortunately, the man's reaction was he got depressed. He started talking about how his life was over. He should just give up because he can't drive anymore. In these situations, you need to handle it with an empathetic attitude. You need to be understanding. But at the same time, you need to be firm. Especially when a patient gets panicky or angry, which have been some reactions. Patience is not only needed in everyday optometry work, but also in missions. I had an interview with a lady named Vicki Christensen, who is a nurse that does a lot of missions trips for cataract surgeries. And she had actually talked to me about the conditions that they worked in. Now, they don't work with all this high-tech equipment or even fancy facilities. No, they have to actually bring their own equipment with them, and they usually work in schools or churches and have to operate on the patient on desks or even tables. So they have to make sure that everything is sterile and stays sterile, so there are no infections that happen. Another struggle that they may have is language. A lot of her missions that she has done, she does in Spanish-speaking countries, and she doesn't know how to speak Spanish. So I had actually asked her, what do you do what do you do with the language barrier in a different country? She had Mrs. Christensen had said that most of the time they have a translator with them, but if they don't have a translator, it goes to the old-fashioned charades. Although she had said language is not too much of a trouble in her mission work, and while I'm nervous about it, I don't want it to stop me from going to do it. Patience has always been a somewhat easy virtue for me, but I know there are always ways I can grow, especially with people. Now, during this whole experience, a virtue that has really tested me has been diligence. It has been a struggle with me, being a senior, is diligence, just keep on doing my best work, even when I'm tired of it. I've had to be diligent on my schoolwork and Capstone this year, and it has been a very big struggle for me. But during research, I found diligence is a very big part of optometry. To become an optometrist, you need 8 years of schooling. You need to have 4 years of undergrad in either biology or any biological science, and then you need 4 years of graduate school specifically for optometry. And while I am glad I don't have to go through medical school, which fortunately isn't required for optometry, it's still a lot of school in my mind, and while I'm not looking forward to it, I always want to be looking at my end goal, saying this is where I want to be. I also found that optometrists not only fix vision, but they also take care of patients before and after surgeries. They can do minor eye surgeries themselves, and they actually check for diseases or any other kind of conditions you may have in the eye. What I didn't know before this year was that you can detect some diseases through the eye. One example would be diabetes. Diabetes actually affects the small capillaries in the retina in the eye. And often diabetes will cause these small capillaries to bleed, or you can have a yellow liquid come from the eye. And usually when optometrists see that, it is typically because the person has diabetic retinopathy. And so it's just a way that you can catch diabetes in a person. While learning and doing research about optometry, there are many things that got me excited for it, but also things that made me very nervous. One would be, the work, but also just working with people. That is a little hard for me sometimes. But with Dr. Phillips, when I was shadowing her, I also found out that working with the patients in the eye is not the only thing that you do. Another form of diligence is optometrists actually have a lot of paperwork that I didn't realize they needed to do. As I said before, they need to record all the data of their patients, but they also have to fill out forms for prescriptions and any other formal paperwork like that. The reason that optometrists need this information is so that they can make the best decisions for their patients. That is one of the most important jobs of an optometrist, is if you can find a solution that you want to find the best one for your patients. They also have to make decisions that might be a little bit interesting. When I saw this when my second appointment that I saw during my shadow day was with a woman who had a bad eye infection. I later found out that this woman was a nurse that worked at a hospital, and somehow she had gotten a bad infection in her eye that caused her eyes to become red and irritated and very painful for her. During this process, Dr. Phillips had to find out which kind of infection it was. But unfortunately, she couldn't find out if it was a bacterial infection or a viral infection that she could have gotten because she works in a hospital, which can have any of those options. So in the end, she actually gave a prescription to her that would give her eye drops that would fight both of those infections if she had it. So it's just decisions like those that need to happen, because sometimes not everything is clear, not everything has its written out procedure that you need to do. I wanted to challenge myself this year in diligence by doing a glasses drive. This really pushed myself because I don't know, it's something different. I've never led something like this. I actually collected glasses for the Lions Club, which is a big service organization, and they help with community and national needs. They help with the homeless. They help get people food. They also help people get glasses when they need them but can't afford them. And this is what I collected during my glasses drive, is I collected old used glasses from people at school and other places that they don't need them anymore and they could be donated. And as I said, I haven't led anything like this before. I am usually a follower. I'm very much a follower. I would happily be given an order and fulfill it. But to actually be a leader where you make the decisions, you make the calls, it's something that actually kind of terrified me. I found that while leading was very different from following, and it was a push for me, I also actually found it very humbling. I learned more about leadership. I learned that while, yes, you do make the calls, you do make the plans, you still can't do it without people who are supporting you. I found this out because I had Mr. Butler and a few friends who had helped me immensely when I was stuck and I didn't know where to go. And at the end of the glasses drive, I was actually able to collect 73 glasses with, I don't know, it's a lot to take in with this. Being a leader was difficult for me because I learned how to figure out how long I needed and all that. Now, another virtue that I needed to work on, or I want to work on, was balance. This year has been very busy for me, and like most people, I overscheduled myself. It is so easy for us to overschedule ourselves and then make our life stressful, something that we don't need. Balance is a virtue that we often don't emphasize enough. The world now, it focuses mostly on success or performance. For if you work hard and you perform well, then you're successful and therefore you can do anything. But I found it's actually important to have rest and peace for your life, because often without it, you take for granted the simplest things in your life. You miss it because you're too focused on one thing. I also found that balance is also learning what takes priority in your life. I found that I was making school a priority in my life. I was taking it before my family, my friends. It wasn't good. I was focusing too much on my grades. And something that, yes, will help, but it isn't all, end all of everything. I am also a people pleaser, so I was finding that I wanted approval from people and not from God, who that's all that really matters, is his approval. Because I neglected my relationship with God, saying, I'm too busy. When I first started this, I found that my focuses were very selfish. I was thinking,